I am a big believer in lifelong learning, so I'm always trying to expand my toolbox. I don't think we should ever be done because the field of psychotherapy is constantly evolving, right? So I will say I am very eclectic and very integrative, and I really try to offer a variety of options because what one client will be drawn to and what will work for them to feel safe enough is not the same as the next client. And so, what the three of us would probably have different experiences of what feels safe.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Doerge, and I am the founder and CEO of New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families. I'm joined here today by our medical director, Dr. Harold Hong, and Kelli Underwood. In 2013, Kelli moved to Durham, North Carolina, and launched her own business, To Be Aligned. Today, she has a thriving psychotherapy practice and continues to train and consult with school districts, counselors, agencies, and companies. Kelli has been training therapists in transformative Insight Imagery, TII, since 2000 and is the sole owner of Transformative Insight Imagery. In all facets of her business, Kelli embraces diversity and is a passionate ally to all who experience discrimination and prejudice. Thank you very much for being with us today, Kelli. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am just thrilled to be with both of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I love starting these podcasts off, obviously getting our audience to know our guests a little bit better, and I would love to hear a little bit about how you got into this work and just what drove you to enter the behavioral health field.
Sure. Would love to tell you that story. Well, ever since I was a kid, I was sort of the friend that everybody would come to talk about whatever was stressing them. And so I got a lot of feedback growing up that I was a good listener, that I should work with people, that I should be in a helping profession. So that sort of always had me thinking I would do something with people in a helping profession, right?
Right.
Then when I was a senior, I was really struggling as a senior in high school. And I ended up advocating for myself with my family to go and see my own mental health counselor to help me. And that was a life-changing experience. To have a counselor, really for the first time in my life, I felt really listened to, validated,
seen
without judgment, accepted for what I was going through and how I felt, even though I was just a teenager, right? Yeah. And the presence of a supportive and safe person. I remember sitting in a session early on with this therapist and saying, I'm going to do what you do for a living. This is what I want to do.
Right.
And then the third thing that really just made it clear what kind of degree I would get and where I would go next was in undergraduate school, I signed up for an intro to social work class. And I still remember the first day in the class, great teacher. And they were talking about the values and the ethics and the knowledge and all the different things that social workers can do. And I was like, this is me.
Right.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is my life path.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was how it unfolded.
Yeah, and it's always amazing to me how people get into this work. And obviously, a lot of us have had our own struggles and difficulties and come out the other side and then, made it our career and our life. And that was kind of my story. But I do think that, I similar to you in a lot of ways, there was, certain guys along the way in my journey that I just saw and that were walking the walk, right?
Yes.
And I was like, man, if I can, be like those guys, I mean, what an amazing way to make a career, helping people, saving lives and all of that. So, I mean, it really is incredible work. And so just so humble to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I am right there with you on that. I feel like I tell people all the time, this is sacred work. It's sacred. we are on the front lines trying to really impact people in a positive way. And it's really meaningful and purposeful work to witness somebody's journey, to be beside them in their roughest times and watch them rise out of it is just such an honor to me, like truly.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So in your work, it began with having this really positive experience with a therapist.
Yeah.
And what I have run into, I do therapy as well, and I do a lot of medication management. And I still have a lot of clients that are there for meds, but they have a therapist, and they're not really sure if it's a good therapist. They go every week, it's fine, but they've been going every week for a year or 3 years or 10 years, and they're not really sure if this is what they need. They just know that it's helpful and they go. But I think a lot of people would be interested to know what is a good therapeutic relationship, or what does good therapy look like? And I think everyone has a different answer to that question, and different answers resonate with different people. So I'm always interested to hear from our guests, to the benefit of our audience. In your experience, what does a good therapeutic relationship look like?
Yes, I'm really happy you asked this question. And it's really interesting timing because I spent the day yesterday online training folks with the topic of how to be more effective in psychotherapy. And the two major points I invited people to focus on as therapists is, one, we know from the research that what clients remember about our sessions long term is how they felt in our presence. How they felt in our presence. We know that rapport and empathy and the connection are the key. And if somebody is not feeling connected with me, I'm a big believer they should, as a customer seeking mental health services, they should be able to have the experience of a therapist that they really have enough connection to, enough safety, enough trust, or enough rapport that they then can become willing to be vulnerable enough to do the work.
Right.
So I think the rapport and the ability to be a real person with professional boundaries, to be genuine, to really practice deep listening and being who you are in your own personality, but bringing a conversation. I'm a real person. I get a lot of feedback from folks I've supervised, interns and staff, that they've been told in other supervisions or trainings or even their education that they have to be really kind of constricted in the session. And I just don't think that's real. I work in the field of trauma, and I have for 25 years, and people want to feel a real person in front of them.
Right.
A real person who really cares, who's not giving them a bunch of baloney, right? So I think that's the first piece. The second piece is, do you have tools, competencies to help the person with what they're coming to you for?
Right.
And what clients have told me is, I appreciate that you really are beside me. You really care about me. You don't have to know everything, but I also appreciate that you give me tools, strategies. You help me to think about things differently and try new things. And I am getting better because you're teaching me things I didn't know before. I think a lot of therapists miss the boat on the fact that they are a teacher.
Yeah.
Whether you're cognitive behavioral, solution focused, internal family systems, art therapy, it doesn't matter what your technique is. Find something that's aligned with you that you're good at, and then have a menu of options for people. And the other thing I said yesterday in this training is, we need to be mindful as therapists that we're not asking people to come to our comfort zone. We need to be where the client is and join their comfort zone.
Right.
Right? So I think all of those things are important in what you're saying.
And what kind of questions would you pose to families or tell them to ask a potential therapist, when they're trying to find a good fit, right? And is there anything specific that you can lean on?
I actually often, when I can't take referrals, I will send people an email with some resources to do some research and to feel more empowered and educated in what they are looking for and what is important to them without making assumptions about what that might be. But being able to say some very specific things about, here are the things I want as outcomes. Here's what I think I would do better with. So I ask clients up front, like, if you've had a past therapy experience, what did you like and what didn't really work for you?
Right.
And then I'm honest about where I align with that and whether there's someone else who might be a better fit. Right. So I really think people should know they're not going to know all the different techniques. But if, for example, they're reaching out to me for trauma, I'm going to let them know we have all these things now available. You might want to research what is EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. You might want to also look at some of the somatic centered psychotherapies. And then I'll tell them a little bit about what that is. I was trained in somatic experiencing, we have sensory motor, we have all kinds of other things evolving now, like AEDP and, lots of attachment-based therapies for parents with young kids. So I'll give them a list of, here's some things for you to maybe look into and see which ones of these sound like they might be helpful. Right. And then ask if the person is trained in any of these. Ask what kinds of techniques they use and then go and look those up. And does that feel like a good fit for me?
Yeah, right.
Ask what their philosophy is.
Yeah.
If they are an attachment-based therapist, if they value the relationship, or they're more of a short-term, concrete, there's no right or wrong here, but it has to be the right fit for the person. And the client doesn't always know what they need, and that's okay too.
Right. Yeah.
But I always tell clients, think of yourself as a customer. You have the right to choose a product that feels right for you.
Yeah, right. 100%.
Right.
And I even think we do that really well here too as well. And I think any good program hopefully does, where, we get super granular on, our aftercare planning. And, we're oftentimes looking at, yes, this is going to be a good fit program wise, but, maybe more so who on the therapeutic team is going to be a good fit with this specific client, right?
Wonderful.
Which is, not always done. And listen, we can't do it 100% of the time,
Sure.
But we really, really do try to take that into account. And because I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the time we're kind of throwing darts at a dartboard, hoping that, yes, this is a great program, but maybe you get set up with, your primary therapist is, maybe they're very green or it's just not a good connection, right? It's not a good fit in some way. And that can really give you a very different experience than if you, had somebody that you had a good fit with, right? So I think it's so important to look at those pieces. I love that you do that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you that you all do that here at New Waters, because it's just really essential. And so the fact that you really break it down to who's the right fit on multiple levels, I think is really going to help people have a better experience. And that's what we all want. That's what we're all in this for, is to
and listen,
help people.
This is not a cheap endeavor,
No.
right, for families. You don't want to have to do this thing multiple times, right?
That's right.
And so if we can kind of get through this, and that can be the difference between a good experience and a bad experience.
Exactly.
In my opinion, right? So
exactly.
It's important.
Yeah. I even go so far when I have a potential teenage client of asking the parent to please give their teenager choice.
Yeah.
To please tell the teenager that they get to do a mutual interview with me.
Right.
And they get to ask questions, and they get to, let them interview at least 2 different therapists and have some say in who they're going to do this journey with.
Right. Right. I think that's a key part of the good therapeutic relationship. Is like, it's just without safety,
Yes.
you can't be vulnerable. And I think it's out there in with the work that Brene Brown has done.
Yes.
The word vulnerability is so popular. It's almost become like a virtue by itself. But I do a lot of work with clients and tell them, you know what, there's a right way to be vulnerable and a wrong way to be vulnerable, right? And vulnerability for vulnerability's sake is actually dangerous.
Yes.
And a big part of your recovery is learning how to be safe.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the essence of safety in therapy is consent, right? Like you have the right to pass.
Yes.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Do you want to go on this journey together for this work today? And I think if there's no treatment plan, that to me is a big red flag. If they're not saying, here's what we'll do, here's how we'll do it. If someone can't put that into words or some type of representation for you, you're really trusting in one faith that this is going to work out.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I think it really should be like very, very transparent, like on the table for everyone to see. So I'm a big advocate of is there a treatment plan?
Yes.
And a big part of safety, I love this thing you're doing with the adolescents is they have the right to pass or they have the right to decide.
Yes.
That's huge. But I'm also really interested in hearing about the tools part because I think that's tremendous. And a lot of us are still in this old school therapy where we're going to do this Freudian, just kind of sit back and be the blank slate and you express yourself and suddenly you'll realize this epiphany about yourself.
Yeah.
But I can't say it really happens. And there's a reason why a lot of psychodynamic people are in session 3 days a week for 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But if people are getting the tools, I think that is so interesting because a lot of people don't even know that you can go and work with a therapist to get tools that will change your life.
Right.
Like, can you tell us about the tools that you've helped your clients with?
Well, I am a big believer in lifelong learning, so I'm always trying to expand my toolbox. I don't think we should ever be done because the field of psychotherapy is constantly evolving, right? So I will say I am very eclectic and very integrative, and I really try to offer a variety of options because what one client will be drawn to and what will work for them to feel safe enough is not the same as the next client. And so, what the three of us would probably have different experiences of what feels safe.
Right.
So some of the tools that I lean into, well, the foundational one for me for 20 some years has been transformative insight imagery. And I also have, I think my practice has changed significantly as the neuroscience has really come out about how to bring the body and the nervous system into treatment. And so I definitely access somatic experiencing and Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory and Deb Dana. I really love a lot of her exercises about helping clients experience the different states of their being and helping them be able to more fluidly regulate and move through them. And the TII actually has a component of really helping folks with that. I think mindfulness is valuable, but I think a lot of times well-intentioned therapists, we sometimes misstep with mindfulness. And with traumatized folks, it can be triggering if we're asking them to go into themselves before they're resourced and have enough resources and regulation to go in with mindfulness. Because getting still or getting quiet or meditating can also be really unsafe for some people, right? So I think all of these things have to be catered to the person in front of you. I definitely value cognitive therapy, working with who's narrating the story of the moment with clients I have found very valuable. TII also has a big piece when we go into the more deeper 8-step process of parts work. And I think that parts work, I know a lot of people are getting trained in internal family systems, but this idea that we all have many facets to our personality, many parts. And in the world of trauma, I find this is one of the more powerful interventions that I see sustainable change in, is when people can, whether they use art or the imagery or even more psychodrama practices to really deeply access and connect like that 10-year-old self that went through that trauma. And now they are taking care of those younger parts that did not get what they needed. I found that to be really powerful. So I do a lot of nervous system regulation kinds of things. I'm very experiential. I find that, and I'm very relational and attachment lens focused in everything I do, but I'm always incorporating like Dr. Dan Siegel and Bruce Perry, and there's just lots of people that I really value. His new book with Oprah, What Happened to You, is excellent. I was also trained by Steve Terrell and Kathy Kane in nervous system work. They have a great book called Nurturing Resilience, so I use a lot of their techniques. So I really am fairly eclectic, and I really have learned you have to pace the order of your interventions in the relationship and in the context of where you are with that client and what they are ready for. Readiness is important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm super. You covered a ton of ground.
Yes.
And I think it would be really helpful for our listeners to go through this journey, like maybe kind of step by step. And so I think it's helpful to start with trauma, because just like, how do we think about it? We have a lot of people who think, trauma is something horrific that happened to you.
Yes.
Right. But therein lies this big issue, because in the big world of trauma, there are things that are truly horrific, and there are things that are very subtle.
Yes.
Right. And not obviously traumatic. And for some reason, they just show up in your office and they say, something's just not right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know if we could start there.
Yes.
And see how you would open up the conversation with them about trauma, and how you would layer in the nervous system integration work or the other tools you're using.
Well, I'm a big believer that in trauma, we always have some varying levels of feeling disconnected, out of control, and powerless. So I am really vigilant that I may, if I misstep, accidentally reenact some part of that with a client. So I am a huge, adamant proponent of collaboration, choice, and making sure clients feel like they have a voice with me, because that runs contrary to trauma, always. If you have a voice, you feel heard, I am here beside you, but you get to choose what's best for you. So I like to start, even with the idea of trauma, with what do they think has been traumatic in their life? We start where they are with their definition. Over time, with the psychoeducation and whatnot, they might start to go, oh, I think I had other traumatic experiences that I didn't previously identify as that. So I like the definition that, one of my teachers, Peter Levine, uses from somatic experiencing. He says trauma is anything that overwhelms your resources for coping. Now, the key there is we all have different resources for coping with the same event. So that trauma is not actually defined by the event. It's defined by the effect. So I think that's the first eye-opening thing for a lot of folks. Wait, so I lived in a home where my parent was an alcoholic, and they were sometimes physically scary or violent. But you may have multiple children in that home who were impacted very differently.
Right.
And that's because we all have different resiliencies, different temperaments, personalities, resources, right? So I love that Peter explains that, what happens in trauma is that something overwhelms our resources for coping, and then it gets stuck. Right? It gets stuck in our brain, but it also really gets stuck in our nervous system and our body, and we don't get it moved through the system. So that's where a lot of these body-centered techniques are helping people to move it into a new place. Sort of like a train that's derailed, and you're getting it back on the tracks and moving it down to the next station.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So you talked about feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about feeling powerless, disconnected.
Yes.
And what's the connection between those two points in time? Someone's doing?
Which 2 points?
The moment of feeling overwhelmed, or
Yeah.
repeatedly feeling overwhelmed, beyond, like, stress beyond your capabilities.
Right.
And then showing up as an adult feeling disconnected, disempowered,
Yes.
frustrated.
Well, I think the truth is, and there are greater experts out there than me, But the truth is, these patterns get imprinted, right? They overwhelmed. And so as a kid, maybe you learned to just shut down and hide, or maybe you learned to, you had a very intense freeze response. Dissociation became your friend to leave something that was difficult. And we are all brilliant in our systems of protection.
Yep.
And so the first thing I want clients to understand is this isn't bad. This is actually fantastic and brilliant that you know how to dissociate, that you know how to shut down and disappear, that you know how to go into fight response to protect all of your littles, right? This is great that you have we all have this internal alarm system that our neuroception is constantly scanning. Am I safe right now? Is this dangerous? Is this life-threatening? Or is it safe?
Right.
And because our history is with us, I might be sitting here feeling like this feels pretty freaking scary to me right now to be sitting here with you all. And you might be over here going, this is great. I feel really relaxed, right?
And everybody's response can be so different, right? And I think that obviously you talk about walking into a room, reading the room, that hyper awareness, right? And where, that can actually be kind of a positive thing for something like, my ability to walk into a room and read a room like that, can be a real advantage a lot of times.
All of these things are assets, and sometimes they harm us or our relationships. So the way I explain it to my clients is what we want to do in therapy is help you grow your awareness of when it's helpful and when it's overactive. So I use the analogy of when I moved into my home and I had my alarm system installed. The first couple months were treacherous because apparently the gentleman who installed it put it on too sensitive of a setting. And so when a bird would hit the window, unfortunately, or there was construction behind the woods of my house and it was vibrating, the alarm was going off and the cops were coming to my house. Which made me feel good that they came, but this was problematic. This is a perfect analogy for post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Our alarm is going off all the time, but it's not really something happening now. But the system is set so that it's on overload. So in treatment, what we want to do is help that person feel more in control, have more power, more connection to themselves and others in, my nervous system can now distinguish. For me personally, I did EMDR on a house fire that I survived. So what I remember experiencing doing that trauma treatment was it went from constantly, anytime something smelled slightly burnt, the iron was left on, to a candle was blown out like 4 rooms away, I would go into panic. Like, oh no, something's on fire. And through treatment, what we can do is we really help move through, heal, reset the system so that over time, I don't freak out now when I smell a candle. I don't freak out when the iron's on. My brain, my body, and my nervous system can now distinguish that smell from the smell of something's burning on the stove. That's what good trauma treatment can do for folks.
Amazing. Yeah.
And how does TII play into all of that? And this is something that you have created. Sorry,
I'm just saying that light went out.
Got it? Okay. So TIA, this is something that you've created? No? Okay.
No, I did not create it. I my greatest mentor of my life and teacher and friend and became like a family member to me, Dr. Charlotte Smith, is the creator of transformative Insight Imagery. When she retired, she had been teaching and training folks in this for 30 some years in the Chicago area. And she asked me to carry on her work and gifted me with all of her copyright and trademark material. And so it has been my mission to get it out to as many therapists and clients and regular people because it was the first thing that changed my life and put me on my journey towards healing and wholeness. I went to all of her retreats 3-4 times.
Wow.
Became an assistant, and then became my own teacher of the work. And then in Chicago, I did trainings, and now I'm really starting to try to get back on online teaching for therapists, and retreats in person and online for anybody who just wants to do some self-healing. And so what I love about TII is that it is so in alignment with my values. And that's why I think it remains foundational to all my techniques, which is, to me, the greatest gift I can give a client is the ability for them to trust themselves better. Mm-hmm. To trust their wisdom, their knowingness, and to know that they have what they need inside. Because addiction, mental health, the American culture, all tell us that what we need is out here somewhere, right? We just need to get that thing, that medication, that thing that's gonna fix us. And what I have found is the most sustainable healing I have seen happen in folks is when they realize they have what they need inside. And that's what TII does. So TII, we start with resourcing folks. And what's different than guided imagery per se is that the imager, all the images are coming from them. I am not telling people what they image. So people are astonished and surprised sometimes of what comes up in their own experience, from their own history, to support them, to provide wisdom or love or support. And so there's a greater ownership over those resources because they're mine. That's my place. That's my wise guide, right? And then we really work with clients on practicing in life, here and now, accessing those resources to shift you. So there are aspects of polyvagal, regulation, pendulation from somatic experiencing. So people will come in and tell me all the time, oh my gosh, I got really triggered. And then I used my wise guide and I felt them beside me, or I took 4 breaths of my centering place and I did it differently. I broke the pattern.
Wow.
I was more available. My adult self came and took care of me.
Wow.
Right? And showed up there. We also have people meet their best self, their highest self. And then in TII, you can become anything. So you can experience a whole new perspective, whole new insight that you never had before. You can learn that, okay, I'm really struggling right now. I'm going to merge with that wisdom of my wise guide or that higher best self. And it's a game changer, right? Wow. So we do this incredible resourcing and people own it. I find that people use it. They come back and they're telling me success stories, which is why I love it. Yeah. Then when they're resourced and they're a little stronger and they're ready to be a little more vulnerable and face those fears, we can go into an 8-step journey. And that journey, I teach therapists how to do this because it's unlearning. Because for therapists, your job as a TII co-facilitator is to get out of the way. Your job is not to fix it or solve it or come up with some great idea. Your job is to trust that the imager, their system, their body, their psyche will take them and do whatever they need to do to have the healing today.
Amazing.
And to watch people do this changes their lives. Because they're like, I had no idea that's what I needed to do with that. I didn't know that my neck is tight all the time because I'm holding anger there. And now I know what I need to do to let that go. Or we go and free a lost self that got cut off. So back to what you were saying about trauma can be really obvious or really subtle. I've had so many people over the years free a lost self that they didn't even realize they had cut off from. That was a subtle, it was invalidating. A relationship was invalidating. They didn't get, maybe they really needed affection as a kid. They really needed to be held, but they happened to have parents who weren't affectionate.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that for them was internalized as a child that I'm not loved. When in reality, their parents loved them, but they didn't receive it in the way they needed it. Right. That can be traumatic for a child. And it's not a fault. It's not a blame. It's a statement that can really affect people and their relationships in the future, and children will blame themselves, right? So we have people go and they discover this younger self in the imagery, and the imagery is 5 senses plus. It's so visceral that people are amazed at how real their imagery experiences can be. And so it's very anchoring, and they are in the driver's seat, and the co-facilitator is encouraging, reminding them of the resources they have, asking them things like, what needs to happen next?
Right.
What are you willing to do? Who or what of your resources is available to help you in this moment? And so for me, it's so aligned with what I most deeply believe about healing is when the client truly owns what they're doing and their choice, that's life-changing. That's the ripple effect. So I like to do things that have big impact. I like to do things that are impactful. And so TII has both the resourcing piece and the deeper healing transformation piece. And a couple other things that people have told me is we've got mindfulness in there. People learn mindfulness. They learn regulation. And then they also learn in the 8-step process, parts work, body awareness. They start to get insight that they never had before about what they're holding and where it's being held. And they learn ways they can shift that at any moment. And that's what I also love. People learn any moment. It's all available. I don't have to be in front of my therapist to do this. I have it when I'm at work. I have it when I'm at home with my partner. I have all these resources available.
And are some of these resources like, breath work? I hear you kind of talking about a bed. And what are some of those, particular resources?
Can we do one?
About? Yeah.
Can 100%. We do one together?
Love it.
Can we do the first one?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So this is
the fun part that we talked about.
This is the fun part. This is like, let's experience it. So even my people who help me with marketing have said, TII is really tough for you to talk about because it's an experience and it is so different for every person. It's very hard to put to words.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that Dr. Charlotte Smith created this in the 1979, 1980. So this was before a lot of the things that people tell me all the time. Oh, it's sort of like this. Oh, it's sort of like that.
Right.
And so the first thing we do, other approaches have done as well. But I think it's how we do it in TII that you might experience as a little different. Okay. So the first thing we do is we find a center. And that becomes our home base, our anchor for every process that we do. Yeah. And it's a place. And the really cool thing I love about TII is its infinite possibilities. I see therapists open up to their creative side like they haven't in years because you never run out. Right. Like I've been doing TII for my personal journey for 20 some years and I have multiple centers.
Right.
When it's winter here, I go to the beach. Right. When it's summer, I go to the mountains, right? So I need different support at different times depending on what's going on in my life. Right. And TII will reveal
what you need.
What you need.
Yeah.
You will get what you need.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it. And as a therapist, I don't have to know that. I have to give the imager permission to know that.
Right. Love that.
Yeah. So all we're going to do is you can either pick a place you want to venture to, or you can see what comes to you, right? You can keep your eyes open if that feels better for you, or you can close your eyes, whatever is going to help you have a more full experience, right? And so what I like to say is imagine you're just portaling yourself to a peaceful, relaxing, replenishing place. It could be a place you've actually been to. It could be a vacation place. It could be your dream vacation place. It could be a place from your younger years. It could be a place you have access to right now and you go to all the time. Choose a place you really love to be at for calm, for restoration. A place where you can catch your breath. And then let yourself be there. Let yourself be there. Notice what's the temperature here in your place today. Notice how large or small your place is. even notice how light or dark it is. Take a moment to look around. What do you see or sense or feel here? What are the sounds? Allow yourself to take a nice deep inhale of the air and notice what the air is like in your place. Take another breath and see, are there any smells here for me? See if there's something you want to feel the texture of through touch. Maybe there's even something you want to taste. Give yourself a moment to really enjoy your place and all that it has for you here. Notice what starts to shift in your body with the support of this place. Maybe your breath has slowed, tension's releasing, and just let yourself have a few more moments to enjoy all that's here and noticing the shifts. Give yourself permission to come back and really be present here. If something starts to take you away, it's okay. Just go, oh, I'm going to come back to my place now. Take a few more breaths. Feel the support filling you up. And as you look around, you may notice there's sort of a gift here, a gift of support, some additional support for when you come back. And be open to whatever that might be. Can come in any form. And then take a moment to set your intention. When would you like to come back here? When could it support you to drop back into your center? And then be really honest with yourself. How will I remember to do this? Maybe I need to set an alarm or put a reminder in my phone, or just make sure I do it first thing in the morning or last thing at night. Beautiful, beautiful. As you're ready, slowly bring your awareness back to the chair, to the room, and just really noticing the difference. You can feel it in the room for all of us, that we're just like more here, right? More here. So I call that's like really great doorway into mindfulness, So let's just notice the diversity right here with the three of us.
Right.
When I do this online, it's really astonishing how people put in the chat all the differences in where they went.
Right.
Like, did anybody have water where they went today?
Not for me.
I did.
Nature? Any nature? Any trees?
Definitely nature.
Mountains?
Yep.
Me too. Me too. And what sense was the strongest and clearest for you? Which one did you appreciate the most?
For you?
For me, it was, I just had this incredible moment where I took my son fishing. And it's the sound of him laughing.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. I love that.
Good.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was smell. So I kind of, there's this tree at our house in Texas that is this like beautiful live oak that's just sprawling and kind of has this like little nook in it that we do a lot of meditation and just sitting in kind of the base of this tree, and it's just so like comforting. But it had this like smell of like honeysuckle, and I could sense it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
it's really pretty amazing when we first start to open up to what's inside us and available. And so what I find so beautiful and precious is, okay, I have this mountain home that I love to go to, and I'm not physically there right now, but I was just there.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And I was seeing the sunset and smelling the mountain air and rocking in the rocking chair And as far as my brain, my nervous system, and my body are concerned, it happened.
Right.
Right.
100%.
Right.
So I got the same effect, even though it wasn't literal that I was there, right? And so for folks to open up to whatever it is that has supported you is always available at every moment is sort of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing,
Right.
right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
So that's sort of a starting place. Then what we would do is we would really go to the next level of performance enhancement and practice, with clients. And so let's cue up into something that is a little stressful or anxiety provoking or triggering, right? And let's start noticing how you know that you're getting triggered and where that shows up in your body. So we're bringing in some of that somatic body-centered work, some of that nervous system work. And then we have people practice, what would it be like to just take 3 or 4 breaths of a couple of aspects of your center right here when this happens. Just 3 or 4 breaths of the smell of the honeysuckle. Just 3 or 4 breaths of the sound of your son's laughter is enough to shift you, right? Like Deb Dana talks about moving back towards ventral vagal where our home is. That's when we're rest, digest, settled, able to connect, present. And anything that moves us a little bit back that way is regulating,
Right.
is settling.
And I don't think most people know that you can do that,
Right.
right?
Most people don't know. It's these little micro moments. People think there's some overwhelming thing they have to learn. 3 or 4 breaths of your favorite part of what you just did is enough to shift you so that in that moment, you can do something different. You have more available to choose differently.
Yeah.
It could be the tone of your voice is different. It could be you pause before you speak. It could be you respond instead of react. It could be you walk away.
Yeah. Yep.
Totally.
Well, and here at our site, we do breath work with all of our clients, and it's always amazing to me because it is probably one of the most impactful
Yes.
interventions we have here.
Yes.
And it's, probably the cheapest thing that we do as well.
Yes.
So it's just, it's amazing. And because people go into it, with not really understanding what it's going to be all about. And they come out of it just having this like transformative experience.
Exactly.
And it's really beautiful to
Yes.
just kind of give them a little glimpse of like, this is out there. And these are things that you can start utilizing and put in your
Yes.
toolbox, right?
Right.
And your breath is always available.
Right. I mean, I talk about recovery as taking radical responsibility for your well-being, like understanding only I can make myself feel the way that I want to feel or need to feel.
Exactly.
Actually. But this, what you're talking about and what we just experienced, it opens up this whole new layer, which is how can you take responsibility unless you trust yourself to take responsibility?
Yes.
But when you take someone through an exercise like this, you're not telling them, you are showing them,
Right.
or they are actually showing themselves
Yes.
that they could do it,
Yes.
right? And as they, because I'm like, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yes. Yes. It's there. That's what I love so much is exactly what you're saying. People start to get more confident. They feel like they have competency over how to manage the really hard stuff in life.
Right.
Like I have some things I can do. I have some tools, right? And it
I
builds
mean, as
confidence.
we were going through our experience, I felt deep relief. And I also felt like a spark of like joy and energy. And to be realistic, like we all need that sense of relief from time to time. We
Yes.
all need that spark
Yes.
of
Yes.
inspiration from time to time. And if you grew up in a place where no one showed you how to do those things yourself, alcohol is a good way to get relief.
Exactly.
Adderall or like another stimulant is a good way to get that spark.
Yep.
And so, those substances misused, like they're actually intended for a thing that we all need, right? But the use of those things is born out of this distrust that I
Yes.
can do it,
Yes.
right? Like I can only get it from out here. But when you're showing people, no, like you can take radical responsibility because you can realistically trust yourself to produce that. And that's freedom.
That is freedom. Love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. That is freedom.
But it's
Yes.
so powerful that,
Yes.
it's hard to figure this out on your own, right?
But I couldn't have.
Right.
If I hadn't walked into Dr. Charlotte Smith's retreat, I don't know that I would have figured this out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and we're finally talking about these things, right?
Yes.
And that's the point of, having this podcast is obviously trying to bring a little bit of awareness, to folks that, I feel super fortunate that, listen, I went to treatment back in 2008 and I learned a lot of this stuff, but not everybody has that experience, right?
Exactly.
So, for those of us that are kind of lucky enough to have stumbled upon it, it's great, but everybody should know about this, right?
Yeah.
Should be front page news,
Right. Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
it's just unfortunately not. And, obviously, exercise and taking care of our body and all of those kind of components. I mean, this is all so important for our overall well-being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's all important for our overall well-being. And it starts with that deeper healing, I find for so many folks, is those internalized stories from our painful experiences of, well, I don't deserve this, right? Do I deserve well-being?
Right. You do.
Am I worthy of it? Mm-hmm. Am I lovable? Is anybody going to stay and not leave? Like, all of these things are under it. And I have just found that the trauma treatments and the transformative insight imagery can help people, not just manage symptoms and create new behaviors, which is really important and helpful, but let's go to the heart of the matter and let's help you regrow yourself up from the inside with compassion and love and support, so that you can say, like I had a client say the other day, it's a really tiny voice now that wonders if I'm worthy, because there's a much louder voice that goes, heck yeah, I am.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
We want that part to be in charge.
Yes.
The part that goes, yes, I am worthy.
Yes.
Amen.
Well, I mean, this has been a great conversation and so much information. And where can everybody find you? Your website, I gather.
Oh, yes. My website is my name, kelliunderwood.com. The trick is you have to spell my name the way my mother gave it to me, which is Kelli.
Got it.
Underwood. Just like, yes, the singer, and no, I'm not related. Nor am I related to the actor, Blair.
There you go.
And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram. It's my name, Kelli Underwood, LCSW.
Great.
And and I have some upcoming stuff going on. I'm actually just joined the platform of CE training and workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be doing an introduction to TII on there for 3 CEs in July. It'll be recorded. And also offer some introduction on my website through just a course that you pay for without CEs for folks who just want to experience it.
Perfect. I love it. Really. Such great information. And thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
And find us at findingnewwaters.com and on all streaming platforms. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for having
so
me.
much.
Thank you.
All right.